Hi, I'm Louise. I'm an artist and I love charcoal. Absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite mediums and I haven't used it in a while now, especially not for portraits. And I have this itch to just let loose, get my hands dirty, add some messiness to this way too clean workspace. I mean, look at this. So pristine, so orderly. Am I even a real artist? Is this an operating room or an art studio? This has to change. There we go. So you might recognize this setup from my previous video about charcoal drawing, the one named Everything I Know About Charcoal in One Video. I'm linking it in the description for you. I draw crows in that video, which is my favorite subject to draw with charcoal. But my very close second favorite subject is portraits. And I haven't made a charcoal portrait since I made this guy. And that was years ago now. I might have leveled up my skills since then. I don't know, let's find out. So I'm just gonna try my hand at some charcoal portrait sketches. And while I do that, I'm gonna share my best portrait tips with you and we can practice together. All the references that I draw from in this video is from the same brilliant Instagram account called Earth's World. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of sick of seeing the same pretty, young, symmetrical, wrinkle-free faces from Pinterest drawn and painted over and over and over again online. I just crave realness, just regular human beings with interesting personalities and faces. This account is a gold mine for artists. All of these photos are taken at American county fairs and it's just real people who don't know they're being photographed. There's no posing, it's just real life. And also the lighting is really spectacular in many of these photos. I love it and I've been longing to work with these references for quite a while and I'm so excited to finally get to it. So let's get to it. I usually begin by identifying the overall shapes, the simple shapes that make up this portrait. So I squint at the photo and I try to make out the silhouette of the head. I also look for the shadow shapes, that's the areas of darkest dark. And then I carve out the form like this with shadow shapes and contours. With this drawing, I started by toning the paper so that I wasn't working from a white background, because white backgrounds, they tend to make me a little shy with the contrast and the values, and I usually lose my mid-tones of my drawings, like the shades between the darkest dark and the lightest white, and that can give the drawing like a flat appearance. And that's not what I want. I want contrast, I want deep darks, and I want shades in between. So I toned the background so that I can then lift out the highlights with my eraser, like I do here. And there's a lot of contrast in this photo. There's strong sunlight from above, and this man has white hair, so I wanted a darker background for him to stand out against. I'm using vine charcoal here, sometimes also called willow charcoal, which is a lighter type of charcoal that's easily erasable. You can see that even when I'm really pushing down with it, it just gets to a dark gray and not really black the way that compressed charcoal does. And that's because vine and willow charcoal, they're more like raw pieces of charcoal. They don't have any additives or binders or any of that stuff that's in compressed charcoal. So that's why they don't really get as dark black as compressed charcoal does. So I usually start my drawings out with vine charcoal so that I can remain flexible and I can erase my mistakes. And then when I'm ready to commit, I use compressed charcoal, either in stick form or in pencil form. And now going in with the fine tip eraser to create some crisp highlights. And then just slowly but surely carving out the portrait and adjusting until I'm happy. All right, let's do a couple more. Like I've mentioned in some of my other videos, I'm not really a fan of too much photorealism. It's not my thing. The process of that is just too meticulous for me, and I find that it triggers my perfectionism, and perfectionism takes the fun out of art for me. So that's why I'm always striving for more looseness in my drawings and paintings. I don't always succeed with this, but it's kind of like an ongoing challenge for me. So my goal with these portraits, it's not to get the likeness 100% spot on, and I never want to copy a photographer's work pixel by pixel. Anyway, I want to use it as inspiration, and I want to do my own thing with it. I do want my drawings to look accurate and believable. I talk about this in my video about portrait drawing and also in my course about portrait drawing, the difference between photorealism and believability, at least in my opinion. So photorealism for me, it means creating artwork that is more or less indistinguishable from a photograph. And that is a very special skill on its own. It takes immense amounts of practice and time to accomplish a photorealistic piece of art. But an artwork can be accurate and it can look very believable without being photorealistic. That's kind of what I'm aiming at here. I want these to look like drawings, like really loose drawings, but I want the proportions to be accurate and I want them to read like actual human beings. So the eye line needs to be correctly placed and the back of the head needs to match the front of the face, etc. Getting facial proportions right is really difficult, even if we're not aiming for likeness or for photorealism. So I have to constantly zoom out and sort of look at the whole picture and then constantly correct my mistakes. While you're drawing something, there's constantly this process going on in your head where you're simplifying what you see. You have this idea in your head about what something is supposed to look like, and whether you're aware of it or not, you're constantly trying to like fill in the blanks with this stereotypical image of how a face is supposed to look like. And that's not always the reality. So it's a constant challenge to really just look at what it is you're seeing and to see it for what it actually is and not what you think it's supposed to look like. And that's why I love these types of portraits, because I can't use like a model of a face for these portraits. I can't use one of those wireframes because they're always of like perfectly symmetrical model looking people, aren't they? At least in my experience. It's a very particular type of traditionally beautiful person, and sort of, oh, the nose is supposed to go like at this point and the eye level is here, and then you divide the face up into thirds and all of these tricks. And I find that those don't really help me to accurately depict what it is I'm looking at, and they don't really help me to portray people that wander outside of this norm, this drawing tutorial wireframe norm. So I find that a much better approach is to just practice my observation skills and to measure the proportions that I see in front of me and not the proportions of some wireframe model that I have learned in some book. Anyways, let's move on. Let's do one more of these. So I'm approaching this one the same way. I start by just finding the silhouette, and then I'm placing a few facial landmarks. So I'm placing the eye line and the line of the tip of the nose, the mouth, the chin, so that I know that I have those accurately placed before I start to actually draw them in. Hair can be really tricky. There's a lot of hair going on in this photo, and one trick to not get too caught up in hair too early on is to just loosely block in the shape, the overall shape of the hair, which is what I did here. And then I'm adding in some shadow shapes. So I'm going back and forth a lot in my midtones and my highlights, just trying to simplify the shapes of the highlights and the shapes of the shadows. Because I would argue that those are the most important aspects to get right if you want to get an accurate read. It's not the details of the portrait, it's the shapes of the shadows and the highlights. And now I'm starting to struggle a bit with the hair. I'm using a blending stump here to add little curls here and there. I'm not trying to add details to the entire hair. I just want to indicate the texture of this hair. And then at the very end, I go in with my charcoal pencil and just punching up those blacks, those darkest darks. Alright, my portraits are done. I actually love how they turned out. I mean, of course they're not 100% accurate, but I think I achieved a level of looseness that I am happy with. I'm gonna have to draw more portraits from this account because there were so many. It was really difficult to choose and it was just so much fun. And let me know in the comments if you would like more videos like this one. As always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in another one.